Oho, ulan çireten, dörülü mutmini, ulan zallada, hareme bu.
새로.
Америкийн монголчуудын соёлын холбооноос жил бүр уламжлал болгон зохион байгуулагддаг эзэн богд Чингис хааны 27 дахь удаагийн тахилгын ёслол эхлэхэд хэдхэн мөч үлдлээ. Ladies and gentlemen, the Mongol friends, finally, please be seated. 27th annual Chinggis Khan ceremony officially began soon. За энэ тахилгын үйл ажиллагаа эхлэхээс өмнө та бүхэнд аль биесээр танилцуулах мэдээлэл байна. За өнөөдрийн Чингис хааны тахилгын ёслолын гэрэл зургийг туяа энэ одоо гэрэл зургуудыг аваад манай Монгол Америкийн соёлын Америкийн монголчуудын соёлын холбооны вебсайт дээр одоо та бүхэнд үзүүлэх юм байна. За өнөөдрийн үйл ажиллагааны бүх видео бичлэгүүдийг Александр Надмитов энэ бичлэгийг аваад мөн манай одоо вебсайтн дээр та бүхэнд дэлгэн үзүүлэх болно. За та бүхний харж байгаа инх Чингийн сүл, мөнх Чингийн сүлийг Цогтбаатар ах маань энэ бэлтгэсэн Sign Ink компани Madad Ali, Liquid Ali одоо хэвлэж одоо бэлтгэсэн байгаа. Okay, I have a special announcement for this ceremony. Our official photographer is Toya. She will take all the picture and we will post it on Mongol American Cultural Association's website. And our official the videographer and film maker is Alexander Nadvitov. So this video will be posted soon on our website. And you see the suit there, the one, the white and blue suit there. We call this Chinggis suit, Chinggis suit. This suit there designed by Cogtbayer and printed by Sign Ink, Madad Ali, Liquid Ali. They are the sponsoring to print this special suit there. Okay. Та бүхний өмнө Америкийн монголчуудын соёлын холбооны ерөнхийлөгч доктор Санжалтан урьж байна. I would like to invite President of the Mongol American Cultural Association, Dr. Sanjaltan.
All stand for a moment of silence in memory of our founders, Professor Gombajap Hangin, Sorjalam, and Loken Hood. So, Professor Gombajap Hangin, Sorjalam, Bon, Losen Hood, Narika Torsen, Nekform, Chimegwivak Sky. Please be seated. So, a warm welcome to the diplomats from the Permanent Mission of Mongolia to the United Nations, and diplomats from the Mongolian Embassy to the United States. Ladies and gentlemen from near and far, welcome to the 27th Annual Chinggis Khan Memorial Ceremony. the Mongol American Cultural Association extends warm greetings to all of you who have arrived from all four directions, north, south, east, and west, including the Hudson Mongols, Southern Mongols, Northern Mongols, the Buryat Mongols, the Kalmyk Mongols, and the Tuvan Mongols, gathering together today to celebrate the memory of Chinggis Khan. Нуухдах Монголын улсын банкын төлөөлөгчийн газрын дипломатууд, болоод ануудах Монголын улсын элчин газрын дипломатууд, bon хоолоос тоглосон ирсэн ноёд хаттаараа та бүхнийг $27 дахь удаагийн ээлжил Чингис Каагийн ёслолд тавтаа мөрөлхийг үрж байна. Хоёр урд зэн баруун дөрөн зүгээс хөрөлсөн ирсэн хазар монголчууд, өвөр монголчууд, ар монголчууд, Буриат монголчууд, Халмын монголчууд, bon Туvan монголчууд Канада Монгол Америкийн соёлын холбооны халуун дотн мэд зүгээ хүрч байна. Chinggis Khan was the greatest military and political leader in human history. The legacy he left us from the 13th century set a standard of leadership which remains unsurpassed to this very day. In creating the imperial Mongol state, he influenced the future course of civilization and brought about a cultural and technological revolution to all parts of the known world. Chinggis Khan'ı хүн төрөлхтний түүхэндх агуу ихэд сэрэг bon улс төрийн өдөж байсан. Chinggis Khan'ı 13 зуунаас бидэнд үлдээсэн өв уламжлал өнөө үеийг хүртэл үдирдэн зулаад харахад барилгын тодож жишээ болоод ирсэн. Chinggis Khan Монголын эзэн тулсыг байгуулснараа ирээдүйн соёл эзэншилд нөлөөлөд зогсоогүй дэлхийн өнцөг болон соёлын bon технологийн төлөвлөлт өөрчлөлт хийсэн. For these reasons, we gather together here today to honor the heritage left by Chinggis Khan and his contemporaries. We believe, as the descendants of forebears who participated in the creation of the Mongol nation, we have a solemn duty to continue to remember and celebrate the life of this remarkable man. In this connection, we announce that future ceremonies starting in 2015 will be led by a new organization, the Chinggis Khan Memorial Foundation, which I urge you to support and join to strengthen the memorial ceremony here in the U.S. We will give you more information about this later in the program. Team Chuachras Bidu, another Chinggis Khan, Tuni Lalumchulin Bidinda, Lalumchulson, Ulumchul, Yosas Anshali, Deadland, Gundulher, and the Putin Sokorat, Dana. Bidu book there, Mongol the Sneaker, Wilson by Golakcha, Every day the Sinkan, Lalumchulach, Uchras, and Abuik, Uniamdru, Alder Nerigo, Urgucha, Dorson, Sanja, Bacherchen, Tempelhurite. Unter Holoton, Whiteman, Arntown on a Shaken, Taklin, Bayer Yosuliga, Chinggis Khan Memorial Foundation. Chinggis Khani Dosklin Sang, Kimete, Shin Bagul, Vakam Bagul, Hubalna. Timochras, Ilignek Mongochuda, Tana, Enfu, Taklin Yosuliga, Arnold, Undusturigin, Olumbekul, Jaguru, Chivana. En afsluiting gaat dat het gaat met de Eureka voor de Green Textile. It has been through the continuing efforts of many members of the Mongol American community that we have, over the past quarter century and longer, furthered and expanded the meaning of this tradition to the community. We are committed to making certain that the ceremony will continue to grow stronger roots and become a permanent tradition within the community. Mana Mongol American Kolboni Shudin Tagoshukwa Setkul Vitlin Talar, Burn Donjil Bit Hampton, Info Yosuzangshun, Butcher, Third Kore Urgit Mongoshutan Confucian, Taklin Yosulin Sash, Volumolum, Butter, Book on the Stagger, Sun Hilchik, Biggie Mongol to the King on the banking, Hevshul Zangshu Bona getting the Batit Kichivana. In closing, I want to express my deepest gratitude to the many individuals who helped to make this ceremony possible through both material and moral support, and have, through their efforts, become true offering givers to Chinggis Khan. First, I would like to acknowledge the MACA board, Chinggil Tu Board Jigid, Sarambata, and Chimed Bajijam, and Tony Ettinger for their constant support and guidance in making the ceremony possible year after year. I also want to thank Bilik Borjigid, David Ali, Benza Chinov, Yana Churumov, Ujadin Chulo, Dyamba Darin Chulon, Sasha Nabitov, and Darima Soktin, who contributed to the work of the organizing committee in many ways. We also thank the Bodino family for their offering of Chinggis Khan board sip, made specially for this occasion. Taksudinya taklin bayriga zakan yavulkut Çin setkil et material bon sankugin tusunca setkil harukli özülsün olmuyor kumusta Çin setklasin palık çivena. İnget encilin taklin nasılayga zakan bay yavulkut Önüp yolga çe bengin demkli tükürçe Vlasin makagin hüdürlün gişot Chinggil Tu Board Jigid, Sarambakar, Enk Chimit, Baji Jamsa, Bontoni Achin, Edinburgh, Bayullah. Mon Bilik Board Jigid, David Ali, Dembe Achinov, Diana Churumov, Ujadin Chulo, Dyamba Darin Chulon, Sasha Nabitov, Bon Darima Nar Zakan Bayul Khajulda Mashika, Kövdemir Olsunda Talakın Bayulçıvena. So by the power of the eternal blue heaven, let us who are gathered here today meditate and remember the meaning of Chinggis Khan as we begin the 27th annual memorial ritual now. Munch Tengirin Kuchundar Himen, et Imongul Hildikshik, Vanatar in the Pornsolson, Olin Inye, Bada Yak Herundalan Chilling, Shige Chinggis Khan and Torsun, Vishal Ticha, Takman Takskaya. For the younger people in the audience, the Chinggis Khan ceremony consists of 17 individual steps. And as they come in, I'll just explain and walk through some of the ceremony so that you can follow it. There are 9 paladins led by the Jonung. Each step is an offering and a memorial to Chinggis Khan. The ceremony starts with Hwanjin reading the Ejna Sung text.
Ashti namguni happening by ho. Ja, sat bogit Chinggis Khan. Uchin natne hamtar. Jia tushwit lugus salt. Bogdor vaisat soy ho. Eron dekhal skill lugo. Chakkin un lugo. John am Bursten Italy Deutsche. Soon am Bursten Ashane Simmer. Ching's Killer, Changulin Dehnam Bitter. Ja, Chinggis, Bob Chinggis Luga Nigna, Eronik Declan Jogla, Patrungi Kalgulum Tan Second Sarga, Padar Square Turam, Bakchun Sarha, Hamok Monglan Herlan Usha, Hamtrumbulum Kin Hotki Herla. Ja, Sat Bob Chinggis Hana Siklin. Sote apn Uchinikin Sekosnigat, Sur Yicht, Sultan Sekosnigat, Sus Yicht Urluk Night Tana, Eron Jichuk Unichujis, Amted Ditgan Ersartan Organum, Echurson, Ivan Sairha, Ashtin Amgali, Herlan Sairha.
Step 2, Chedra prepared the lamp offering. The lamp offering represents the eternal health of the Mongol nation. The lamp offering is made by Jonun. Step 4, Hoga reads the Zula text.
Aurapcha, Ham Bok Chinggis Khan, 같은 행 그건들 한 원래 스납타나 함흑 마을 오르스타나 그거 그렇죠라 그 시험을 나사 수습 기시플린 딜을 속tum 무르그남 벳 우르스던 우셔 아무스남 에디 산스님이 무터 조스튼 민 무르건 해라
Sorry about the technical. Hafsa prepared the hill offering, step 5. So the hill offering is is a representation of the eternal protection of the Mongol nation. So Hafsa is by art. So the wine offering is made by the gentleman. I'm sorry, the hill offering.
Аврагчаа хаанбог Чингис хатныхийн гөгөөндөн хаан уул үрднартан хамаг Монгол өрөстөн ариун нандэр хэйван алган дөөрөн дэлгэж хүндгөлийн төлөөн илтгэн хөсөр зүгдэн өргөнөө мэдээд өргөснөр нь өршөөж хамаснаар нь хайлтгаж бослын минь бөтөн хайрлаа.
Tuli prepared the wine offering. And gentlemen offer the wine. I'll read the wine text.
아브락자 한복 징스 같은 행 그건들 한올 엑스나타나 암흑 마을 오르스타나 오슨 상내들 오락슨 테레네심 사흑진 더전 그 시험을 우르그남 벳 우르크스니민 자울라 아무스니민 에르모 알듯 느리탄 도사소 알튼 소르가리탄 다가소 오줌 버시기탄 마나소 아오가 걸음지탄 세하소
Gentlemen, read the text. This is the testimonial. All you have to repeat each text, each stanza.
대 땡그레스 제야테
저 정러시야테
일기 의견의 이외테
들기 떠나 이원테
일기를 몽골한 만도성
Дэлгэр Монголоо мандуусан
대 드륵 징기산
대 дүр Чингис хаан
алтан дэлхий далдартай
алтан дэлхий алдартай
арун жүг чууряатай
арван жүг чуураатай
аз Европыг донслуулсан
Аз Европыг донслуулсан
алдар ихэд Чингис хаан
алдар их Чингис хаан
хагснаа хамтруулсан
хагснаа хамтруулсан
хамаг Монголоо нэгтгэсэн
хамаг Монголоо нэгтгэсэн
хаан улсыг байгуулсан
хаан улсыг байгуулсан
харьяа ихэд Чингис хаан
харьяа их Чингис хаан
агуу нэритэн матасо
агуу нэритэн матасо
авга виситэн дорсасо
авга виситэн дорсасо
алтан бошгитэн хамгаалаасо
алтан бошгитэн хамгаалаасо
ашид голомтитэн сахисо
ашид голомтитэн сахисо
гал голомттэн
Gal golumtun badrat,
gal golumtun badrat,
gachır oruntan degjiret,
gachır oruntan degjiret,
unsun oksatın hugjet,
unsun oksatın hugjet,
ur huktun ornitwe,
ur huktun ornitwe.
Jonah now reads the Chinggis text. This is a laudatory text.
Avga bogdin virs,
Avga bogdin virs,
altın yastına törül,
altın yastına törül,
agu türen havalık,
agu türen hamgalık,
altık porçinin tügel,
altık porçun tügel,
olus Mongolin türdü,
olus Mongolin türdü,
olan jürkeren jutuksın,
olan jürkeren jutuksın,
durun hudu isin ördük,
durun hudu isin ördük,
tidne virs tügel,
tidne virs tügel.
Hange gawin odumarna,
Hange gawin odumarna,
hamıl Mongolin ödgün otmin,
hamıl Mongolin ölgin otmin,
halong galanti sekin havalık,
halong galanti sekin havalık,
halık Mongolçut tügel,
halık Mongolçut tügel.
Dengir oğluna sengandan,
Dengir oğluna sengandan,
tenun sehin tanıtıktan,
tenun sehin tanıtıktan,
o sayılan batlın havalık,
o sayılan battın havalık,
Oğur Mongolçut tügel,
Oğur Mongolçut tügel.
Döçün dürüne unsun nektin,
Döçün dürüne unsun nektin,
terilgin noruna oksan nektin,
terilgin noruna oksan nektin,
ar öğür hazara,
ar öğür hazara,
oraya tuva halmek,
oraya tuva halmek,
altık Mongolin uris tügel.
altık Mongolin uris tügel.
Mangat prepared the hearth offering. This is the eternal flame to Mongolia. And Jonah leads the hearth ceremony. This is the convocation. Papa reads the Balotha convocation text.
자, 절로낙 졸긴 구는 타츠넴. 자, 하마고스타나 한이츠네 역대 달럭 달츠남. 자, 한이츠네 그건 함투스턴 혼트시건 사이하. 호레 호레 호레. 자, 옥내름들. 자, 어른문 옥내름들. ırıkçılı ınk tebin, ın buhun, hore, hore, hore.
And Jonah leads the return. The Chinggis. Jonah leads the reading of the Chinggis text.
Amerik olsun ergin beta,
아무래도 생일입니다.
altık Mongolin uris beta,
알뜰 몽린 오르스비다.
soyul adam şilan bartınım beta,
Soilotupslam batnam bida.
서론 존센 마하는 베다.
Sorobunchunsam baharnam bida.
디제스는 어르냐간 흑질릭,
Tejosun orneha okchilik.
들슨 어르냐간 만들릭,
Tursun orneha mandili.
운승 화른디 내람들릭,
Unsun horni nerendli.
우르그 구슨 유라남.
Urguchusun yurana.
알롱가왕인 다원 국대,
Alangwagin gavokta.
저태 다원 모습,
Sokte tavang musut.
암브가 하나 다원 국대,
Amge hane tavokta.
알고네 아롱 호로노,
Aramne anuronut.
하원 하나 더방 국치,
Aul hane dolan hoksik.
ib 내람들릭 일킴리야.
And that concludes the formal ritual itself, and the young king can now return to their seats.
Монгол туршлагын төлөөлөл энэ тахилгын ажиллагаанд оролцож одоо мэдчилгээ өгөх юм байна. Okay. The representative of all the Mongols who live around the world, who gather here, who will have special greetings to this the ceremony. Okay, begin with Mr. Ishak Mohammadi, Hazara community.
Respected guests and dear audience, it is a great honor for me that I am here to speak on behalf of Hazara Mongol of New York on this important ceremony. So first of all, from my core of heart, I congratulate all of my Mongol brothers and sisters for this historic moment. Dear audience, just for information, let me share that Hazaras are a Mongol origin people living in central highland of present-day Afghanistan called Hazarajat. The majority of Hazara believe in Shia faith of Islam, but a considerable numbers are Ismaili Shias and Sunni Muslims too. According to reliable sources, their population in Afghanistan is around 7 million, in Iran 2.5 to 3 million, and in Pakistan around 500,000. Ladies and gentlemen, I firmly believe that our dark days have come to an end, and as a great nation, we are once again on our path to greatness. Now, like Mongolia, we have an independent and sovereign homeland. In all aspects of life, especially in education, Mongolians are in fast progress. Mongols dwelling outside of the Mongolia also improving gradually. For example, same fast progress can be seen in Afghanistan as a Hazara Mongol are on top in education and getting progress in each walks of life. Today in Afghanistan, it has become a fact that without the participation of Hazara Mongol in the democratic process, a government cannot be formed. Despite all discriminations, including persecution, we are in top in education in Pakistan too. It gives me more hope that a bright future is not so far from us, that against Hazara persecution in Pakistan, we raised our voices all over the world, just from Mongolia to New Zealand and Bamiyan to Toronto. Dear audience, a pictorial presentation was ready to highlight some aspects of the Hazara Mongol and their relations with other Mongols around the world, but due to lack of time, I will put for another time this presentation. Thank you very much, and once again, I congratulate all my Mongol sisters and brothers. Thank you very much.
So all the speakers should be stay here. After each speaker is greets, we will do special literature. Okay, I would like to invite Mr. Tumulzi, Southern Mongolian community, өмнөд Монголын монголчуудаа төлөөлж нэрт зохиолч Tumulzi энэ хүрэлцээр ирсэн байна. За ингээд Tumulzi ахыг та бүхний өмнө өрж байна.
자, сайн байцгаана уу монголчуудаа. Нэрлэн саасан нутаг бүрийн монголчууд та нартай Америк зохион байгуулагдж байгаа эжин Чингисийн 27 дугаар тайлгийн баярын мэндийг хүргье. Америк дахь монголчууд жил бүрийн энэ чагт энд орон цугларч агуу дэдэс их эжин Чингис хаандаа тахлаг талбиж мөргөл ийддэг. Чохонхоо энэ л үед бид Монгол гэдгээр бахархаж аав ээжийн манайг Монгол бол гэж төрсөнд баярлалаа. Тэрстөө 1227 онд их эжин мөнгө тэнгэрт хэлсэн чагаас монголчууд тахлагийн үйлийг эхлүүлж эдүгэгийн хүртэл энэ өдрийг хүртэл 900 шахам жил болжээ. Их эжин болон түүний дөрвөн хатан буюу дөрвөн ордыг нийлүүлж хамтан монголчууд ерөнхий шитгэн гэж тахдаг юм аа. Хавар намар өвөл жон дөрвөн улирлаар тахдаг. Америкт болж байгаа энэ тахлыг бол чагийн хавд өвлийн улирлын тань үлдээж байгаа юм аа. Монголын агуу өвөг дэдэс хүн төрөл хитнэ баларлаг ирэн гэж хэлж болох 13 дугаар зуунд өнөөгийн хүн төрөл хитнэ хүрч чадаагүй уян санааны холч бодлогын гайхалтай өндөр түвшинд хүрсэн гэж би боддог. Энэний нэг жишээ нь Монголын их хаад чандар онгон гэж үлдээсэнгүй хүн жооныхаа хүч хөлсийг тусалж шавхсангүй улс гүрнийхаа эд уурсыг чимхэж бүрлгөөсөнгүй байдаг юм аа. Хөх мөнгө тэнгэрийн доорх хөрсөд новоон газар шороогоос эмхич ижлээгүй юм аа. Дэлхийг өтнөр нь ертөнцид жураасч гаргаалгүйгээр хээч үйдэн өвлүүлж өгсөн гэсэн үг. Дэлхийн тал шахуугийг эжилж явсан агуу их хаад шүү дээ. Ингээд бид өнөөдөр энд үнэ хэрэг дээр их эдэн Чингис хааны агуу их жөрөг санаанд тахлаг тавьж байгаа юм аа. Хэр орон Чингисийн тахлагийг анх үүдсэн тахлагийн жолыг анх асаасан хүмүүсийн уг санаач энд оршин гэж би ойлгож байна. Чингисийн жөрөг санаа гэж хэлэхэд Монгол хүн надад юун төрөнд тархан боторсон монгол аймагуудаа монголчуудаа хураан цуглуулж нэгэн дөөврийн доор амьдрах болгосон бэрхшээлт үйлс санагдаж байна. Хавл хаан, Хотлоо хаан, Эсхий хааны үед их Монгол улс нэгэнд бүрлдсэн боловч Монголын өндөрлөгийг нэгэн жолоос шулуутгаж Монгол гэдэг нэрийг улс гэрнийг ертөнцид мөнгөжүүлж чадсан их эжин Чингис хаан юм аа. Чингис хаан бичнэн хол дээрэн дагуулын аянд явлаач гэсэн заавал Монгол эх орондоо иргэн ирж хөл нуруугаа амрааж хүн малаа төлжүүлдэг байсан. Эх монголоор төв болгох төрийн ёс заншил энэ л үед бүрэлдэн тогтож байсан гэж үзэж болох юм ба. Монгол хаан ялагдал хүлээсэн үедээ ус голыг гатлан уул нуруудыг давж уугаар Монгол орондоо бочин ирж төрийн мөнгө жулааныг бадмаалуулж байсан Чингис хааны буяар дөрмөлж өвлүүлсэн монголоор төвлөх нэг ёсны их засаг одоогийнхоор бол хууль журам гэсэн үг л дээ. Энийг мөрцсөн хэрэг болох юм ба. Залуухан эжин Чингис хаан хамаг Монголыг гардан авахд Монголын өндөрлөгт Монгол буюу монголсог 5 томхон ямаг байжээ. Энэ нь өнөөгийн монголчууд 5 хэсэг товоогсонтэй тохиолдлын тоод байх гэж би бодож байна. Гэхдээ бидэнд өнөөгийн монголчууд тусгаар тогтносон улсынхан чамаагүй, тусгаар тогтноогүй орныхан чамаагүй хэн яринд ч төрийн жолоо атгсан ноёд төшмөлдөөс төмөө малаа харуулсан малчит хүртэл бүх өмсөд монголчууд болгоны өмнө тав боторсон Монголыг Монгол ард түмнөө Монгол тусгаар тогтносон Монгол орндоо хурдан цуглуулж багтаах гэдэг энэ агуу их үйлс бүгднийх нь өмнө нийтийн үүрэг болон талигдж байна. Монгол улс тусгаар тогтнолоо сэргээсэн 100 жилийн өмнө Монгол улсын ерөнхийлөгч элбэгт орж дэлхийд боторсон монголчуудаа хандаж монголчуудаа Монгол эх орондоо нэрт амьдраарай гэж жагсан байдаг, уриалсан байдаг. Энэ ураа жохомхоо хахар өвлийн өнгөрөөж өрхөн хавар ирсэн үйдэх шимэт хур асгарах мэд үгэмэр санагсан. Төмөр торыг алхаад гарвал хүрчгээр ойрхон байдаг өвөрлөгчд энэ уриад урамшиж Монгол улсад очсон. Очоод бочих гэж байсан үлдэхэр болсон. Хэр улсад сурч байгаа залуучууд Монгол улсдаа очиж ажиллах халуун сэтгэл өргөлсөн. Харамсалтай нь ботод нөхцөл байдал ерөнхийлөгчийн уриалгыг арай дагж амжих байна. Өнөө Монгол улс нутаг болгоны монголчууд нутагшин амьдрах хууль жигийн орчин арай бүрдөөгүй байна. Монголын ард түмэн боёо одоогийн улс төрийн нэр томьёогоор хэлбэл иргэний хүчин буряд халимаг тува хазаар өвөр Монголыг Монгол улс цайршуулахаар ойгоогүй тэмцэж маш олон ажил хийж байгаагийг хараад бид маш их баяртай байна. Баасангар гэхэд Улаанбаатар хотод өвөр монголчууд Монгол улстай амьдрах нь гэмт хэрэг биш гэсэн гарчгаар иргэний хүчин үйл ажиллагаа явуулж хөвлийн баг хурал хийсэн байна. Энэ бүхэн бол их сайн нааштай мэдэнүүд байна. Тархан боторсон монголчууд он тоол хэрлэн 3 голынхаа нутагт их эзэн Чингис хааныхаа өмч нутагт амьдрах боломж 21 дугаар зуунд нээгдэж байна гэж би бодож байна. Тархан боторсон хураан цуглуулж, дахиад тархан боторж, дахиад хураан цуглуулж нэгэн жолоос шулгахад үүний улмаас мандан бадрах энэ бол угаасаа манай Монголын 900 жилийн явж ирсэн түүх билээ. Үндэсний түүх давалгааны хэлбэрээр хөгждөг гэж Оросын эрдэмтэн гомлох томьёолсон байдаг. 20 дугаар зууны хуурмаг өөртөө жасах, тагас өөртөө жасах, тусгаар тогтлох, шин колончил гэх мэтийн улаан болоод хар шуург эмсгээ авах боломжгүй явсан монголчууд өдөөг төлжин дэлгэрэх, нэгтэн нийлэх, мандан бадрахын бошгонд ирсэн гэж бид үзэж байна. Бид өнөөдөр энэ үйлс эртээхэн биелэхийг их эзэмийн эвгөх болтугай гэж Төмөжин Чингис хааныхаа гэгэн дүрийн өмнө сүсгэлэн жалуурья. Тэгээд хамаг сүлд тайлбарыг эрхлэн явагдуулж байгаа Америк Монголын соёлын холбооны Санжах тэрвэтэй хамт олондоо баярлалаа. Энэ ивентийг хийхэд сэтгэл гаргасан, хөдөлмөр гаргасан бүх хүмүүстээ баярлалаа. Та бүхэнд баярлалаа.
Our next speaker is Mr. Hamatayo Vladimir from Buryat Mongol community. За манай дараагийн амжилт Buryat монголчуудаа төлөөлж Buryat-ийн нэр дэвшилтэн түүхч Vladimir Hamatayo хүргэсэн байна. Vladimir Hamatayo.
Хүндэт ахад өнөр Бурят монголчууд баяхал далай тэрөд дэлхий дээр 2000 жил монголчуудаараа хамт хаагуур ягуур явж нэг түүхтэй, нэг хэлтэй, нэг соёлтой явдаг зонод таанатта энд мөнөө Чингис хааны 1155 онд төрсөн нэр наадамд суглараад ирсэн зонд дандаа халуун мөндө хүргэе. Би эрдэмийн хүн ихэд том юм элэдхэн бишэд байна 6 юм. Тэгээд намдаа ханга 5 минут халуун зүрхэн өргөө сайн юугах баяр хүргөө болоо гэж. Тэгээд дандаа хөх байна. Манай дэлхий дээр Монголын түүхийн үзэж 200 жил дэлхий дээр олон гөрнүүдтэй явдаг хүмүүс бий. Монголиэдийн гэж орсорхохтой. Тэгээд октябрийн 11-нд их баяр суглаан болоо конференц эрдэмчүүгийн тэнд төрүүшийн ярш их баяр аваа баянда манай Монголын эрдэмийн Америкт байсан заны сонгуулж Монголын түүхийг үзэж байхад ямар асуудал тавина, ямар гоёрт асуудал тавина, ямар гүнзгий асуудал тавина. Тэрэнд их баярлаш бэх Алисия Канти Принстонда байдаг түүхийн докторы их тэмдэглэхийн төлөө тандаа баяр хүргээ тийм суглаад ходог хэрш монголнуудаа түүхийг үзэж явдаг хүмүүдий ондоо ясны бүди өргөж явах ёстой гэж. Алисия Канти Кристофер гэдэг хүн их манай Монголын түүхээ мэддэг явдаг. Манай асуудал монголчуудын асуудал өргөдөг хүмүүс тэд байна. Тэдний бүди явах ёстой. Тэгээд тийм эрдэмэ суглаа болж байхад явах ёстой. Би их баярлалаа. Ганц Нью-Йоркийн биш хажууд байдаг штат дээр олон хүмүүс их суглаад байгаа. Тэгээд мөнөө энэ нэр нааданд ирээд байхад манай президент саншаалтан бимба хүдэ их өргөж тус хүргэж явах ёстой гэдэг. Ийм суглаан цаашаа ямар ашиг хийх ёстой гэдэг. Дэлхий дээр монголчууд ийгээд 3-5 тэшээгээд тараад гээд явах юм наагүй. Энд гараад бодит тийм олон юм юм шиг болж байхад хазар монголчууд олон сая гэж хэлээд явах аяа но тийгээд хашин гээд ямар асуудал юугаар хийх юм нэ. Ямар харгын зам баянаг мандаш. Би тэгээд тренинг шүүгээд өсгөдөө ийж тандаа хийх байрам. Ийм асуудал өргөх байрам. Та мэднэ хэдэ институт Конфуций гэж. Хаагур ягур дэлхий дээр тэдэш нэгэд байна. Өөрийн түүх, өөрийн соёл, өөрийн тэр Конфуций юу гэв ямар сайн юу тренинг явах юм гээд нэг шүүгээ тархида оруулаад өшөө ондоо асуудал хашуудам юусаашлах гэдэг явна тэдэний мөнөө хаана боловч байна тата мэдэх ёстой. Тэгээд бид тэрхний аваад тренинг яваад би санана. Институт Чингис хаан гэж нээх ёстой. Чингис хаан газар дээр дэлхий дээр юу хэ тренинг сэн гэх. Их олон юм. Ганц тэр дэла Европ Азийн нэгдүүлээ. Тэгээ ганц тэр биш. Тэрэн онд их гүнзэг юм хэсэн Монгол түүхийн мэддэг хүн тренинг мэдэн. Но тэрэн саашаа явдаггүй. Монголд тэрэн их аваар хүргədэггүй. Бүряд Монголд хүргədэггүй. Халмагташ хааш. Тэгээд юм баг. Тэр институт гэж нэгээх их гоё байгаа гэж би санаа. Нью-Йоркт, Вашингтон, ишо хаагур яваа. Европод демократ гөрнөд олон байна. Тэрүүшин Англи, Герман, Герман тэгээд ишо юм байна. Франц, Итали тэрхүр нэжэдэр нэгээх юм байна. Хөдөө байгаа. Сугуулархад нэ ноёд хатгалар шах. Дэлхий дээр монголнуудад ганц нэгэн гөрөн байна. Тэр гөрнөө өргөж явах, хамтаршаа явах. Тэгээд тэр институт нээх гэж тандаа нээж гараа өргөж тус өргөж манай Монголын төлөөлөгчд ийм ухаантай салшаалтан бимбахо тэдэнд нээж бишг илгээх хоролда Монголын ерөнхийлөгчтэй Монголын ноёд хатта игээд дэлхийд биш Абаамд биш Франц нет хаана яах вэ биш тийм гасар илгээ аваад гэр шабат нэг рахан шиг 2-3 дахар тэгээд тийм эсвэш нэг сугуулрахад нэ мандаш шинэ болох шинэ цаг ирэх. Тийш би найрнаг тандаа тэгээд ишөө дахин Бурят монголчууд халхан монгол, өвөр монголдо ихэд уртай тэрээр хоног хараад байхаа. Дөрөхөө дээр тэдэм нэмэнэ. Ах дүүнэр навэна гэх. Тэгээд тэдэхрээрээ хамтаршаа ийм гоё суулаа хадах хэлшээ. Ямар ч асуудлах өргөж байхаа. Ганц хатар наадам биш. Чингис хааны төрсөн өдөр юу үгнэг манд. Хашингээ цаашаа явах. Ухаанга хот ондоо болгож. Дүүхээ үзэж явах. Баярлалаа. Ишөө дахин танда халуун баяр хүргье.
The minuta жахан шахчага. We have to squeeze time for 5 minutes each speaker. Okay, our next speaker, Chinggis Nagbito, the Catholic Mongol community. За манай дараагийн мичрэг халимгаас ирсэн Chinggis Nagbito. За улаан задад халимгууд орж байна.
Эрхэм күнтэй ахнар дүүнер, эрхэм күнтэй Türk монголчууд. Билгин дала гэдэг төвөж соёл кел судулхин нийгмийн холбооны нэрэн дээрээс арин гэдэг сэтгэлээс нь хав мен танд көргье. Долоозун шаху жил хооран Юан улсын хуйлаахан Чингис хаанд нэрсэн дахин ёс зогсон байна. Тэр цагаас аван одоо хүртэл Монгол үндэстэн хамаа байв чигэн ямар газар байв чигэн энэ дахин ёсыг хадгалаад Белград яваад байна. Энэ дунд хэлэхлаа энэ дахин зүйлэн шин байна. Энэ Чингисийн төрсөн өдөр өргөнлөхтэй энэ таклигэ хитүүлсэн Юнан гэдэг газарт сан гэдгээр тэмдэглэж байна. Эсгэж өвөр Монголд цагаан сүлдэн тахилга байна. Чингис хааны мэндэлсэн өдөр шин тэмдэглэнэ. Одоо бохла манасага элгэцапте энэ тахилын үчир утхын тусгаар хэлэхлээ. Юуна төлө тахил гэж яхан. Энэ монголч газар дээр бүг монголчуудыг нэг-нэглээ өрдөлөхөөр олон зүйлсэн халахаар соёлын нийгмийн шашна номын эрдмийн нийлүүлээд бүг монголчуудыг нийлүүлэхин төлөө энэ тахил тагшина гэж санджана. Күнтэй өрмөд би бохоо энэ Чингис хаан тахилд төрөн болжээ уралсанаа тэгээд сэсгэл дүүрэг ikkedгээр санжаахты ханалтан явуулжээ. Тэгээд эра холооны нэрэн дээрээс Монгол Америкийн соёлын холбоонд ийм бишгэн бэлэг ачилсан байна. Манай төрийн ном. Тэгээд санжаах ханды бэлгэлжээ. Тэгээд энэ бохоо танаа холоон бас ийм ном бэлгэхэр байна. Организмд маш баярлалаа.
Баярлалаа. Chinggis Nagbito. За манай дараагийн илтгэгч маань Андрей Кузыгет Тулаагаас хүрсэн. Our next speaker, the Andrei Kuzyget from Tuan community.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to greet everybody today. Thank you all for coming. And I would like to tell you a very old tale. Once upon a time, there was an old man, and he had 3 sons. But his 3 sons, brothers, they didn't do well. They weren't friendly to each other. They were always fighting, arguing, cursing to each other. And then, old man, to do something about it, he gathered all of them, and he just brought a broom, just a regular broom. His 3 sons, they were sportsmen, so he asked his older son to break the broom. His older son was a boxer, so he tried to punch the broom, but it didn't break. Then he asked his middle son to break the broom. His middle son was doing karate, so he was trying to chop it, but it still didn't break. In that case, his youngest son was a chess player, and he tried to use a chessboard, but he still wasn't able to break the broom. After that, their father untied the broom and gave the straws to his sons. Then they easily broke each straw, and then the whole broom was destroyed. So then he told to his sons, listen to me, as long as you stay together, you're united, and you get along with each other, you will be unbreakable, you will do very well. And after this lesson, his sons were very friendly to each other, they were respecting, and in general, in their life, they did very well, they succeeded in everything. So, because they realized their father's wisdom. So, I guess same thing can be applied in our life, like all we are, grandchildren of great Chinggis Khan, Kalmyk, Tuvan, Buryat, Mongol people. Even American people, I think, have a little bit of Mongolian blood, because before, when European continent was connected, when Asian continent was connected with North America, Mongolian nomads, they traveled to North America. So I guess thank you very much again for coming, and let's give it up for Mongolian American Cultural Association and their representatives like Yanda, Altan. Thank you very much. Good to see you.
Our next speaker from homeland of the all Mongols, Dr. Sarolderno from Mongolia. За бидний эцэг дээдсийн үлгийн нутаг Монгол улсаас энэ хүрэлцэн ирсэн доктор Sarolderno.
За энэ төр хүрэлцэн ирсэн та бүхний амар амгалан айлтгая. Эзэн Чингис хааны дахилгада сэтгэл зүрх гаргаад ирсэн та бүхэндээ бас энэ ажлыг 27 жил зохион байгуулсаар байгаа Америкийн монголчуудын соёлын холбооны хамт олонд маш их баярлалаа. Тэгээд агуулгаагаар бас хоёр зүйлийг хурдан санаагаа хоёр зүйлийг хэлье гэж бодсон. Эхний зүйл нөхөр бид нар одоо энэ ингээд олон дэлхийн олон монголчууд ингээд зугалдсан байгаа. Энэ бол одоо нэгэн цагт их хүч хэрэгжиж байсан Пан Монгол гэдэг Нарбай Монгол үзлийн одоо нэг илэрхийлэл болж байгаа юм. Тэгэхээр өнөөгийн энэ улс төрийн энэ хэцүү үед бол мэдээж бидний энэ яг тэр Нарбай Монгол гэж бодож ирсэн улс одоо улс төрийн зохиомжтой хэллийг зураад ч юм уу бүтэх боломжгүй байж магадгүй. Гэхдээ тэрний юу гэсэн үг вэ гэхээр та бидний оюун санааг сэтгэл зүрхийг хинч хизээч хэлээр хязгаарлаж чадахгүй гэсэн. Бид нар яг сэтгэл зүрхээрээ ийм магаар ингэж байх юм бол энэ Нарбай Монгол гэдэг бол бидний ингээд хамтдаа бид Нарбай Монголыг одоо хаач хизээч зохион байгуулж явж чадах юм шүү гэдгийг одоо энэ хөл харуулж байгаа маа. Нэгдүгээр. Хоёрдугаар санаа бол бид нар ингээд Нарбай Монгол гэдэг ингээд бид нар ингээд монголчууд цуглахад энэ олон одоо хазаараа, тува, халимаг Монгол ингээд цуглахад бид нар ингээд олуулаад цуглахад биднийг нэгтгэж байх нэг чухал юм байна. Тэгэхээр мэдээж хэл, соёл, шашин гэдэг ярьж байгаа л да. Гэхдээ дэлхийн дээр татан сурсан хүмүүс яа харахгүй хэлний хувьд хэл бол өгөж амьд өөрчлөлтөд хөгжиж байдаг зүйл учраас хэлний хувьд бол бас холдох магадлалтай. Шашин бас өөр нэгдгийнхаа тэнд байгаа нутагтаа шашин бас орж болно. Шашин бас нэгдмэл байж чадахгүй байж магадгүй. Соёл ч гэсэн өөрчлөгдөж болно. Тэгэхээр яг монголчууд гэж бид нар ингээд нэгэн энэ одоо энэ англиар хэлбэл community гэж байгаа монголоор одоо бидний энэ дэлхийн олон монголчууд гэдгийг биднийг ингэж нэгтгэн нийлүүлэх хамгийн чухал зүйл юу вэ гэхээр тэр өвөг дээдэс болоод гэж байгаа. Өвөг дээдэс дотроо чухам яг энэ эзэн Чингис хаан байна гэж байгаа. Тийм учраас ердөөсөө биднийг яг их чухал нэгэн ингэж зангидж Чингис хааны тахилтыг хийхээр санаачлаад хийж ирсэн хангин гомжоогоос ахуулаад санжаалтан доктор тэргүүтээ энэ бүх хүмүүсийн санаа бол яг чухал зүйлээр ингээд бидний нэгтгэн зангидж байгаа. Тийм учраас ийм олон сайхан хүмүүс, энэ олон сайхан бүгд ирсэн байна. Бүгдээрээ хэмжиж ирсэн монголчууд байна. Бүгдээрээ хүрэлцэн ирсэн байна. Тийм учраас та бүхэндээ ахин хэлье. Зохион байгуулагч нарт баярлалаа. Ирсэн хүн болгонд баярлалаа. Их эзэн Чингис хааны өдний бодлого шигэ.
take here. No, we're going to do a demo. Stand here. No, say times. We'll do 3 bows to memorialize Chinggis Khan. Get what will be the Tuhan atau bukti dan atau berbisa. Please be seated.
Thank you, everyone. For all our program, unfortunately, His Excellency Odoch, the permanent representative of Mongolia, who is delayed by international flight, so he's not able to participate on this ceremony. За нэгдсэн үндэсний байгууллагын дэргэд суугаа Монгол улсын байнгын төлөөлөгч Одоч бай олон улсын онгоцны аяллаас үүдээд энэ арга хэмжээд орж болцоогүй болж байгаа. За тиймээс бидний дараагийн үйл ажиллагаа маань түлхүүр эвтгэгч доктор профессор Николас Гир за энэ хүн маань бидэнд Афганистаны монголчууд тэдний гарал үүсэл түүх шашны асуудлаар одоо энэ түлхүүр илтгэлийг одоо илтгэх болно. За ингээд санаж авах.
Okay, so while we're waiting for a technical switch, I want to introduce Professor Nicholas Geyer, Professor Emeritus of Philosophy at the University of Idaho. Professor Geyer obtained his BA with honors at Oregon State University in 1966. He went on to finish an MA and PhD in religion at Claremont Graduate University. He was a Fulbright Fellow at the University of Heidelberg. He taught in Denmark at Odense and Aarhus universities. Dr. Geyer was hired at the University of Idaho in 1972 and taught there until 2003. He was coordinator of religious studies from 1980 to 2003 and senior fellow at the Martin Institute for Peace Studies and Conflict Resolution from 1990 to 2000. Is Franklin back there? Is it the sound man back there? Yeah, you can turn the music down or off. Yeah. He has published 5 books, Wittgenstein and Phenomenology, God, Reason, and the Evangelicals, Spiritual Titanism, Indian, Chinese, and Western Perspectives, The Virtue of Nonviolence from Gautama to Gandhi, and the Origins of Religious Violence, an Asian Perspective. He has also published over 50 book chapters and journal articles. So, Professor Geyer will deliver the keynote address today, and the topic of his talk is the Hazaras of Afghanistan, their origins, history, and religious persecution. Professor Geyer.
Thank you very much. I am indebted to Sanj Altan for the invitation, and I'm very happy and pleased to be with you today. Let me tell you that I'm not an expert in Central Asian history. My area is philosophical theology, and I've done a lot of work on Gandhi and the origins of religious violence. And as you will discover through my presentation today, the Mongol Hazaras have experienced tremendous and vicious religious persecution and violence. just want to put in a plug for my most recent book. I meant to bring some copies along, but I forgot them at home. But if you're interested, you can get a hold of me. The most reasonable way to get a hold of this book is to email me or get a hold of me, and I can send you a copy of the book. The representative of the Mongol Hazaras, Mr. Mohammadi, talked about the numbers of Hazaras. They are much larger than Wikipedia or other official sources. I've been informed by my Hazara contacts that there is a tendency to underestimate the number of Hazaras because of the general discrimination against them. But here you can see the, I hope this is being projected. Yes, good, on both screens, wonderful. And I just learned this morning that in the 2010 election, the combined Shia, Muslim, and Hazara vote was 23% of the total vote. And I've been informed that that's probably a more accurate way to determine the number of Hazaras in Afghanistan. This is just an estimate of the region of Hazarastat, Hazarajat, where the Hazaras have lived for centuries. Here's another map showing this central mountainous area of Afghanistan where the Hazaras, they didn't choose to live in these mountains, but they were forced primarily because of persecution to find refuge in these beautiful mountains where they have made their home. About 45,000 square miles, which they claim to be their sovereign nation of Hazarajat. This is just a map that I got off the internet showing the mountainous regions of central Afghanistan where the Hazaras have lived. Who are the Hazaras? They speak a Farsi, that is a Persian dialect, with Turkish and, most importantly, Mongol words. The Mongols attempted an invasion of India. Many armies have attempted invasions of India. Some have succeeded, some have not. The Mongol invasion of India, just like the invasion of Alexander the Great, failed. The Mongols are used to high plains in cold weather. Their horses and they themselves did not like the hot weather of the Indian plains, and their attacks were unsuccessful. But the Hazaras have always claimed that they descend from those Mongol troops that invaded India at the end of the 13th century. And genetics have proved their claims correct. Hazaras as a people were first mentioned by Tamerlane. That is our, in English or European, attempt to understand what these people were talking about. This was Timur the Lame. He was a crippled Turkish warrior. We call him Tamerlane. And he encountered the Hazaras when he tried to invade India as well. The first Indian Mughal emperor, Babur, attacked Hazaras in their mountain homes west of Kabul in 1506. So these are the first historical references to the Mongol Hazaras. Now, the original Mongol stock was joined with Tajiks and Arabic Saids, and this forms the basic ethnic base of the Hazara people. Only two scholars believe that the Hazaras originated in Afghanistan and have always lived there. Alexander the Great claimed that he encountered them on his way to India. But this theory cannot really be supported. That they became Buddhist is not a claim that can be supported either. Most scholars now support the Mongol descent theory, and as I've already mentioned, genetics proves beyond a shadow of doubt that these are Mongol people. The word Hazara, there's a number of scholars who debate this, but a consensus is that it's the Persian for the Mongol word for 1,000. Even before genetics came along to prove the descent, the Mongol descent of the Hazaras, blood tests showed that they were distinct from Afghans, Tajiks, and Uzbeks. So they were a unique people even with regard to their blood tests. Two tribal names stem from Mongolian words. So there's more evidence of the claim that the Hazaras make that we descended from the troops of Chinggis Khan. Now, here is a claim that it took me a while, and my Hazara contacts, I thank them very much. Very originally, I wanted to make this claim that they claimed to be the caretakers of the famous Bamiyan Buddhas. And my theory, I think, has been validated at least by the Hazara contacts that I have been pleased to meet and email with. These grand Buddhas, which the Taliban unfortunately now have destroyed, I'll show you the pictures. The Hazaras are not the Kujans, the Buddhists who built these, who carved these incredible statues out of stone. I just want to give you a historical religious context of this incredible sort of phenomenon, starting with Saladin, the great Muslim general in the Holy Land, in Palestine. In 1192, he realized that now he had control of Jerusalem, he could not trust the Christians who fought over the holy sites, the Christian holy sites. He assigned a Muslim family to take care, to be caretakers of the Christian holy sites in Jerusalem. And even to this day, they hold the keys to the holy sites. The Greek Orthodox, the Roman Catholics, the Coptics can't agree about access to these sites. They trust a Muslim to do that. And in South India, Hindus have fought over a holy site there for centuries, and they entrusted Sufi Muslims to be caretakers of this holy site in South India. Now, by analogy, what I would like to suggest, and now I can very joyously announce to you, that even though today's Hazaras are Muslims, the Hazaras are the carekeepers of the great Buddhas at Bamiyan. That is what's left of the Buddhas at Bamiyan. This morning I got an email from my Hazara contact, one of them. He says, "We consider them our wise elders. They have stood there and watched us and protected us over the centuries." I was just overjoyed that I was able to make that connection. Here are the original Buddhas in Bamiyan. The tallest one is this Buddha. Foreign Muslim forces, I don't know which century this was, cut off the top of the face of this Buddha. Muslims are very firm, and we have to respect this, that you should not make any image of any deity. So this is behind the destruction of the face of this Buddha. Here's another Buddha, the Shakyamuni Buddha, also beautifully carved in the 5th century. Here are the two Buddhas superimposed here. And I was unaware until I did a little more research of this standing Buddha. I don't know how tall it is. The face has been partially destroyed. But the Taliban apparently, or evidently, didn't want to blow this one up, thank goodness. Inside some of the caves are some frescoes, which you see all over South Asia. I'll be going to India in a couple of days, and I will be visiting a number of cave temples, and someday, when Afghanistan is at peace, I would love to go to Bamiyan and visit these priceless treasures. You can still see some of the paint there from 1,500 years ago, and a Buddha. The face of this Buddha has been defaced as well by foreign Muslim armies. Archaeologists have found a reclining Buddha in the area, but they have left it covered up. And I just give you an image of what, from another Buddhist site. It is a reclining Buddha, and they've left it covered up because they are afraid that the Taliban will discover it and destroy it. On March 2nd, 2001, the Taliban, after many attempts, they just had to use more explosives, blew up both of the giant standing Buddhas. Here's a proud Taliban after the fact. Taliban fighters with the AK-47 celebrating the destruction of the wise elders of Bamiyan. Today we have a Hazara woman passing by the empty niche, what formerly contained a magnificent Buddha. Many of you probably know these genetic tests already, so I will just go through this very quickly. As I've already mentioned, historians have disputed the Hazara claim that they are Mongols. And I like this quotation: it's not the first time that oral tradition has been proved more reliable than the so-called historical experts. It takes the power of genetics to prove these ancient claims. 2/3 of the Hazara males carry Chinggis Khan's Y chromosome. If I'm interpreting the evidence correctly, this is more Y chromosomes than Mongolians themselves have even in today. So what this shows is that ancient connection. It's a pure genetic line right back to Chinggis Khan. And you probably know this fact. The great Chinggis Khan got around all over Central Asia. His Y chromosomes are found in 16 million Asian males today. Here is, and I don't know exactly how to interpret this, but notice the Hazara, Hazaras there. This includes females too. So notice that that is a greater portion of Y chromosomes in the Mongol Hazaras than any of the other Mongolian people or related people who had been associated with Chinggis Khan. Quite an amazing discovery, and I'm happy to share that with you today if you have not already seen it. The early Hazara religion would have been the religion of the great blue sky, and I was very moved by Sanj Altan opening the ceremony, calling on the power of the great blue heaven to bless this ceremony and this gathering. So the early Hazaras would have followed this ancient Mongolian religion. Here's another quotation I found about: the blue sky alone knows how the issue that is between us will be resolved. So it's a heavenly deity that will resolve the conflicts of the Mongolian people. As a scholar of religion, I'm just moved by these ancient ideas. In fact, I sort of believe that some of the ancients got things a lot better and a lot more correct than we have them today. And I guess that just champions a sort of bias that I have for studying ancient religions and ancient peoples. When I was in Mongolia in 2007, I noticed that the hospitality scarves of the Tibetan Buddhists there were blue, not white. If you go to Bhutan or Tibet, you will be offered a white hospitality scarf. Here is evidence of an ancient religion worshiping the blue sky. And I guess I'm getting my years mixed up. I think it was 2007 I was in Mongolia. I found just as many shamanistic uvus as the Om Mani Padme Om of the Tibetan Buddhists. And here's a picture from my trip. We've got a shamanistic shrine on top of the hill, but Om Mani Padme Om in Mongolian on the side of the hill. An ancient combination, a beautiful combination of a recognition of an ancient shamanistic past. I look forward to the presentation a little bit later on about shamanism in today's Mongolia. Here's a closer view of one of these shamanistic uvus. There's a little bit of controversy about when the Hazaras were converted to Islam. One theory is that they were converted by Shia Persians in the 13th century. But a better alternative, it seems more plausible to me, they became Muslims along with the Ilkhanid Mongols of Persia. In 1295, the entire court of Ghazan Khan was converted to the Shia denomination of Islam. And they started, if they had the resources, taking pilgrimages to the Shia holy sites, the most famous ones being in Iraq, in Karbala. Unfortunately, the conversion to Islam meant the destruction of Buddhist temples and the shamanistic uvus. But both of these are back today. And it was one of the most glorious parts of my visit to Mongolia to see not only a vibrant, proud people, but also the revival of Buddhism in a very, very dramatic and moving form. I visited many monasteries. The Mongolian Buddhist art is some of the best ever made. And I was fortunate enough to see a lot of that art and to visit a lot of the monasteries and temples. The name Said is very common among the Hazaras, and this is another connection to their Shia past. So missionaries were sent out from the Persian Ilkhanate Khans. And the Saids are descendants of the first Imam Ali. So these very early on, these Hazaras switched from worship of the great blue sky to Allah. And the scholars say that it is a very minimalist, even primitive version of Islam. No mosque or formal worship, 3 daily prayers rather than 5 daily prayers. The Saids replaced the shamans, but just as in Tibetan Buddhism, it is very hard to wipe out those ancient religions. Shamanism still survived, and it is going even stronger, as I can tell from the abstract of the speaker later on today. The early Hazars were called Ali lovers, and this got them in trouble with the Orthodox Sunni Muslims, and even when they became more orthodox in their belief, Sunnis held that against them, and it became a basis for the persecution from the majority Sunnis of these Shia Hazaras. They have a different, I forgot the correct name for the affirmation, the only one God, Muhammad is his prophet, and Ali is his wali, or representative. In defense of the charge of blasphemy, it's the highest heresy to say that any human being could be God. I was informed just my Hazara contacts came in just at the right time this morning to make a few corrections to my presentation. and this is what I learned this morning, although Ali is not God, he is not separate from God. Notice that still is on the edge of heresy. They celebrated Ramadan, but not, and the death of the second Imam, Hussein, but maybe you've seen some of this in Iraq, no self-flagellation in support, sympathetic support for the assassination of the second Imam, Hussein. Only after the wars of the 1890s, I hope I have enough time to go through most of this, the Hazaras learned to affirm a more orthodox form of Islam. Moving now to the 1880s, after the second Afghan Anglo War, you will maybe learn from history or know from history that Afghans put up a fight against the British, beating them twice and even a third time. They beat the Russians in the 1980s. They are a proud and tough people. Here are some Hazara Bashutis of certain tribe, circa 1880. The Emir Abdur Rahman in the 1800s attempted to unite the Pashtuns of Afghanistan, and the Hazaras always resisted that because they didn't identify with the Afghans. They thought they were their own sovereign nation. The Hazaras respond very well to the initial battles. And the Amir plays off one tribe of Hazaras against the others. Unfortunately, many of the Hazaras turned against their own fellows for favor from the Amir or whatever. Finally, Emir Rahman plans to wipe out the Hazaras completely. This genocide against the Hazaras started this time. It continues even to this day. The Asian Human Rights Commission has said that in Pakistan, in the Quetta area, a genocide against the Hazaras has been initiated and continues even today. Between 1884 and 1905, an estimated 60% of all the Hazaras were killed in this genocidal campaign. The Hazara War of Independence is a turning point in Hazara history. An exasperated Emir Rahman invades Hazarajat, sets up a base in Bamiyan. Negotiations between the two sides fail, and the Emir orders up an incredible military force to crush and to liquidate the Hazara nation. Gets really nasty. Each side calls each other heretics, kafirs, and the Emir declares, kill or enslave all of the Hazaras. And he just about accomplished that task. In September 1893, the Hazaras admitted defeat. Thousands were enslaved, and 30 mule loads of heads were sent to Kabul. Here is another sad story. I'm sorry for the negative tone here. I'll try to throw in a few positive elements here. The Hazaras were enslaved. And let me just do something very quick here in terms of the Quran and the New Testament with regard to slavery. In both Holy Scriptures, you are to treat slaves humanely, and you should give every one of them a chance to buy their freedom. Muhammad said that only war captives could be enslaved. And there's a general consensus that he wished that slavery could be abolished. It was an institution during the time, so Muhammad did not start it. But the general consensus is that he, and I'm sure Jesus Christ, would like to have abolished slavery. Interestingly enough, all of the Shia imams preached against slavery because eventually they were the targets of the slave traders. The first 4 caliphs of Islam followed the Quran in terms of treating slaves humanely, giving them an opportunity to buy their freedom. The Umayyads and the Abbasids, however, started making it legal to buy and sell slaves, and they finally said it was okay to enslave the Shias, the heretic Shias. There was a shift, a geographic shift from buying slaves in Africa to buying and selling slaves in the Middle East, and finally, and unfortunately, and tragically, to Khorasan and the Hazara sites in Central Asia. They became the targets of most of the slave traders. One scholar called Hazarajat the West Africa of Central Asia. That's where you went to get your slaves. Emir Rahman legalized the buying and selling of slaves, and it was not abolished in Afghanistan until 1920s. Turkmens, Afghans, and Uzbeks dominated the slave trade. It was an act of religious merit to sell an Hazara Mongol. Sunni mullahs, that is the religious leaders, joined in the slave trade and gave their blessings to the slave traders. Rich Hazaras could pay their taxes by selling their people to the slave traders. A very, very sad part of this very, very sad history. Moving into the 20th century, and I hope, how's my time? Am I? Okay, thank you very much. Yeah. The 1931 Afghan Constitution had somewhat of a platform of religious freedom. The king had to be a Sunni, and he had to follow the Hanafi school of Islamic law, which is actually the most liberal school of Islamic law. Hindus, Sikhs, and Christians could celebrate their holy holidays in Afghanistan at this time with the blessings of the king of Afghanistan. Tragically, the Shias were not allowed to celebrate their holy holidays. They were cursed instead. Those who deny the caliphs, and the Shia Muslims deny the caliphs, the authority of the caliphs, and they go back to Ali and his descendants for their authority. And for that, they have been persecuted. In my research on religious violence, it is also a sad story. There's been more hatred and more violence and killing done because of religious differences. Doctrinal sorts of things, dissent of authority. People, for centuries, will kill each other over a matter of where does the authority of the mullahs come from. A very, very sad history. Those who deny the caliphs are worse than a bear, a pig, or the Jews of the Khyber area of Afghanistan. They're lower than the unbelievers, the Christians, the Jews, and the Sikhs. Incredible religious hatred and persecution. Now, many Hazaras, as I understand it, and as I've read, were either forced to convert to Sunni Islam or converted to Sunni Islam to avoid persecution. I'm reminded of a rough parallel in Europe. Jews were persecuted for centuries. Many of them converted to Christianity to avoid that persecution. They were not always successful because they were found out. But it's a way to save your business if you're a trader, it's a way to save your life. And I guess some of us would understand why that would be a choice. Now, moving to skipping over many centuries, this was a quick research project for me, and I learned a lot. Let's move right into almost the present era. The Hazaras joined the Uzbeks and the Tajiks in Afghanistan to form what we called, or was called, the what is it? Alliance, United?
Northern Alliance.
Northern Alliance, that's right, against the Taliban. So the conflict here is not only religious. The Sunni Taliban, of course, attack the Hazaras, especially because they're Shia, but it's also political. And in May 1997, it was the Northern Alliance that caused the initial atrocities. But the Taliban struck back with vengeance. 2,000 for 2,000, right? Isn't that fair? You kill 2,000 of us, we will eliminate 2,000 of you. And the Taliban animus against the Hazaras is even more vicious because of religious discrimination. January 2001, the Taliban killed hundreds of Hazaras in the Yokalum district of Hazarajat. Just found this picture on the internet. Hazara forces congregate in the capital of Hazarajat to get ready to fight the Taliban in the northern parts of their country. I'm going to just take a break because it's a chronological break, just to give a sigh of relief to this very, very sad story. It was mentioned earlier by the representative of the Hazara community, Mr. Mohammadi, that the Hazaras value education very highly. And here is a graduation ceremony last year, December 14th. 358 students graduated from 4 faculties at Bamiyan University. Now, real soon, actually on Monday, I will be traveling together with my travel partner to India. And I'm sure these universities here are just bare facilities, but enough for these students to get a good education. Most of them are graduating in the agricultural sciences, but this is a tribute to a very proud people that has suffered unnecessarily and horribly in the past, and yet they are climbing to the top when given the opportunity. 55 graduates were women out of this contingent. Back to the tragedy of the Hazaras. I'm sorry, it continues even today. There is a road here. I've attempted to point it out on the map here. It's now called the Road of Death. It's one of the main roads from Kabul into the southern part of Hazarajat. And most Hazaras now avoid traveling on this road because they will be targeted for immediate death. It is called the Road of Death. 24 Taliban beheadings and kidnappings. And what this has done is has sort of cut off Hazarajat from Kabul and has discouraged travel between the homeland and the millions of Hazaras who live and work and study in Kabul. Construction of schools and clinics in Hazarajat has ceased because of the lack of communication. Here is one Hazara who lives in Kabul, and he wishes that he could go home, but he's afraid to do so. It's not safe to travel on the road of death. Here's a university student who was killed on the road of death, trying to get back home or to get to Kabul to study. Here's a policeman checking cars on the road of death. And here is a Hazara leader bemoaning the fact that his people are dying, and dying because of their ethnic status and most most specifically their religious beliefs. The current conditions for the Hazaras in Kabul, the capital city, Hussein Zada, Hussein the second Imam of the Shia denomination, not second-class citizens, but third-class citizens. And yet they try to prosper and thrive under impossible conditions. The area of Kabul where the Hazaras live has the fewest paved roads, clinics, and schools. 1.8 million Hazaras live in this area of Kabul. They are attacked from the outside. In 2011, suicide bombings killed over 70 Hazaras in their homes and in their streets. Now, even though, remember, for the 2010 election, the Hazaras and the Shias won 23% of the vote, or voted 23% out of the population, not a single Hazara now has a ministry or is part of the new government in Afghanistan. Some more sadness and tragedy in Pakistan. After the civil war in the 1890s, many Hazaras fled into Iran and also into Pakistan. And they're currently persecuted in Iran, even though they're Shias. The Persian Muslims are Shias. Just recently, I don't have the exact date, but these are the killings that the Asian Human Rights Commission has pointed out and has essentially declared a campaign of genocide against the Hazaras in Pakistan. These are just some of the attacks that I found just recently. You can look a lot of this up on Hazara Net on the web. Got a lot of my information from there. These Al-Qaeda terrorists were the ones in 2008 attacked Mumbai in India and killed a lot of people. The response of the Indian Muslims were to march in the street against them, not to support these horrible terrorists. These same people are killing Hazaras in Pakistan. And I've already talked about the report of the Asian Human Rights Commission. It takes a lot to validate a genocide, but they feel confident that this is the right term to use for these attacks on these proud and persecuted people. Yes? Okay. Perfect. And the report says the primary reason for their killing is because they are Shia Muslims. The primary reason for their killing. Now, I'm not even going to read this. I was tempted to leave this out, okay? When I heard about this, tears welled up in my eyes. And if you want to read it, but just an amazing tragedy. The viciousness of these terrorists. Islamic State is doing the same thing. What is going through these people's minds? That they would commit such horrors over religion. We should join peacefully in harmony with religion, and yet these people are killing in the name of religion. I've already mentioned that the Hazaras in Iran are being persecuted and deported, and they're called barbarians. In other words, these historical memories are quite long. Those were the Mongols who invaded our country. We don't like them, even though they're Shia Muslims. We don't want them in our midst. Don't know what the motivation here was, but in 1998, the Iranian military killed 600 refugees, mostly Hazaras. And in the general Middle East, Hazaras are discriminated and persecuted because of their Shia faith. One moment of light, just last year, a ski race was held in Bamiyan with international support. 30 men and 8 women participated in ski races in the mountains just above Bamiyan. These people will not be put down, even under the most incredible oppression. And I just want to leave you with pictures of these Mongol Hazaras who have prospered and made a name for themselves. I think you should all be proud that you have these Hazara Mongols among you and can honor them for their contributions to Mongol culture and for their incredible survival in the face of incredible odds. Thank you for your kind attention.
I just want to say thank you, Professor Geyer. That was a wonderful lecture, and I learned so much about the Hazara Mongol people and how much they add to the diversity of Mongol culture. And very moving talk. Okay, so for 2014, it's a real honor for us to present the Cultural Humanitarian Award to Dr. Alicia Campy. Dr. Alicia Campy, is she here? Oh, there she is. Okay. So let me just say that Alicia Campy is a recipient of the Cultural Humanitarian Award. She holds a PhD in Mongolian Studies from Indiana. She studied with my professor, Gombajab, my teacher, an MA in East Asian Studies from Harvard. And in her long career as scholar, diplomat, and consultant, she has served as an advisor on national security, politics, economics, you name it, regarding American Mongolian policies. She's personally acquainted with many Mongolian security, parliamentary, political leaders of all ages and parties, as well as leading Mongolian academics. Her resume includes a list of over 85 entries. I got tired after about 30. She's the author of the book, The Impact of China and Russia on the United States-Mongolian Political Relations. She's a recipient of the Polar Star Declaration and the Friendship Medal. She's been, it's really in recognition of her enduring commitment to U.S.-Mongolia relations spanning more than 3 decades that we're proud to present this award to Alicia. Let me open it up.
I'd like to thank Sanj Altan and all the members of the board of the Mongolian American Cultural Association for this great honor. It also shows my age, and that's something I have to come to realize. But when I look at this 27th meeting and performance of the Chinggis Khan ceremony, and I look at our program here and think not only of the beginning days with Sanj Altan and the first president, who is also president of the Mongolia Society and its founder, Hangin Gombajov, and I think of Choji Lama, who was in my home in Ulaanbaatar in 1990 when I was a diplomat there and then came to the United States. And of course, a dear friend from even before that time, Lof Sung, who I met originally in Taiwan, where he had fled, and then again when he came to the United States. And his family members who are here, I've known them for so many years. It's a time of memory and also a time of congratulations to the association and to all of the many Mongolians, regardless of where they originally came from, which notok they came from. They are all Mongolians, and I am so pleased to receive this award and to also say that in part it is a reward for the presence of the Mongolia Society, which actively supports the Mongolian American Association, Cultural Association. The Mongolia Society was founded in 1961 as a private nonprofit organization to promote the study of Mongolia, its history, language, and culture. And the aims of the society today, 53 years later, are still the same: exclusively scholarly, educational, and charitable. And during its existence, we have been able to see the rise of a Mongolian community, a very diverse Mongolian immigrant community in the United States, which is something that is a new phenomenon, an important phenomenon for the United States, as well as for the peoples from the different mutuks of Mongolia. And I am, as I get older and have seen all of this development, this society named for it honoring Chinggis Khan. I remember living in Mongolia, going in 1975, when the name of Chinggis Khan is banned from the textbooks in Hoch, Mongolia. And then in 1990, being in the embassy and seeing Chinggis Khan's portrait amongst the young demonstrators in the streets as an inspiration to unite the people. So I'm very grateful to this society and to Sanjay and to all of the leaders here, Paljay and Enke Chimud, and of course the young leaders, the new leaders, such as Byamba. And I thank you very much, and I wish this organization and all of you great success. And Sanjay, I want to give to you this special paper of the Mongolia Society. It's written both in English and it has been translated into Hoch Mongol, since he's so fluent in both languages. It's the memoirs of Franz August Larsen, which were discovered in California and then given to the society a few years ago. And this was a man originally from Sweden who goes to Mongolia, lives a very fascinating life there, and ends up as an immigrant in the United States, like so many of you. And so, in some ways, this man and his journey through Mongolia and back to the United States is the journey of so many Mongolian Americans who are part of this ceremony and organization. Thank you, Sanjay.
Thank you, Alicia. So, Byamba, are we going to take a break?
Америкийн Монгол судлалын ноён моргол Монгол нийгэмлэгийн ерөнхийлөгч доктор Алиша Кампи дахин баяр хүргэе. Доктор Алиша Кампийн зөвхөн Америк Монгол судлалыг дэмжиж засахгүй Америкт байгаа бүх Монгол олон нийтийг дэмждэг. За үүндээ Бурят, Халимаг, Това, Монгол Hatara of Nitigrinsek. I also want to say one quick dimension of Dr. Alisha Kampi. Besides the Mongolian Society, she supports all the Mongol American community. It includes Hazara, Kalmyk, Buryat, Tuva, in the Mongolian community for her effort. Thank you. Thank you again. One big warm. Dr. Mandukhai Boyindir. Монголын одоо бөөгийн шишний тухай маш сонирхолтой илтгэл одоо та бүхний өмнө танилцуулах болно. And I would like to invite Dr. Mandukhai Boyindir.
Wait, just 1 second. I have to tell you a little bit about Dr. Mandukhai. The title of her talk is Exchanging History for Sheep, What's Credible in the Incredible Rituals of Shamanism. Dr. Mandukhai is a socio-cultural anthropologist and associate professor at MIT. She received her PhD from Harvard in 2004 junior fellow at the Harvard Society of Fellows and taught at the Harvard Anthropology Department. She's been doing research on various aspects of religion, politics, gender, and media in contemporary Mongolia. Her book, which is displayed here up on the screen, Tragic Spirits, Shamanism, Gender, and Memory in Contemporary Mongolia, tells the story of the collapse of the socialist state and the responses of marginalized rural nomads to the devastating changes through the revival of their previously suppressed shamanic practices. Dr. Mandahai, it's a pleasure to introduce you.
Hello. Can you hear me all right? Okay, so thank you very much. Thank you very much for the organizers of the conference of this amazing ceremony. I've been here many years ago, and it's always a very moving event. It's very different from the usual academic conferences that I go, so I'm very pleased not to read from the paper, but share with you some of the insights that I found from my research. So the book is titled Tragic Spirits, Shamanism, Memory, and Gender, but the talk today is titled Exchanging History for Sheep was incredible. What is credible in the incredible rituals? But the sort of more, I guess, casual title is Why Shamanic Practices Proliferate in Contemporary Mongolia. So anyone who had visited Mongolia in the past 2 decades and lived there a bit longer than closer to the natives and not just a tourist, could probably notice that there has been an almost ubiquitous proliferation of various religious and folk practices. Some of them are shamanic. So what I'm going to do today within less than 15 minutes is to do 2 things. One is I'm going to go through some slides, and I would ask you to be with me in noticing 2 things from the slides. One is the demographics of the people that will be displayed in the slides, and second is really paying attention to the shamanic paraphernalia. The reason is that there are meanings attached behind both the demographics as well as obviously the shamanic paraphernalia. And after sort of exposing you to the visual part of the shamanic practices, I want to answer the question, so why do people go to shamans, and what's credible about shamanic practices that probably many of you in this room might think it's very incredible. So in any case, that I carried out in Mongolia was mostly in the northeastern part of Mongolia among the Buryats. And some of the talks today have noted, as well as presentations in the beginning, noted about the importance of the ancestors. And the Buryats in Mongolia practice shamanism partly because of the ancestors. They worship their ancestors because that's how they are attached to the ancestral homeland in Russian Buryatia that they lost to the Russians. And through the worship of ancestors, they also connect with their past and connect with their present among themselves. It's just like today we're gathered to remember our common ancestors. They also gather through ritual ceremonies of shamanism to remember their common ancestors, not only one ancestor, but many. So that's one of the big differences, and they do it so ritually. So as I asked you to pay attention, so this is one picture of a shamanic practice. As you can see, these are mostly male shamans, and this is a big ritual, complete with Western media as well as its own researchers. And this is in the home of our shaman, the 2 disciples. The older shaman is the teacher, and the 2 younger people are actually hoping to recover their lost part of the lost health. One of them eyesight, and the other one movement in his legs. Then the same shaman with his entourage, ritual entourage, including children who participate in the ceremonies. Then another slide of a 13-year-old boy who has been initiated as a shaman. Then a female shaman who is about 45 years old, of a quite high sort of stature. Then another female shaman who is 21 years old, and both of the female shamans are performing small-scale ceremonies in their homes. and then another shaman, as you can't see his face because he's in his full paraphernalia, performing a very sort of elaborate and communal ritual. So why shamanism is proliferating? And as you can see, people of all ages and of different backgrounds get involved. And and it's a big sort of phenomena in Mongolia, whether you believe in shamanism or not, and shamans or not, and no one is expecting you to, obviously, to believe in order to talk about the rituals. So the question is why shamanic practices proliferated in such magnitude. So there are multiple answers. Some argue that it's the anxiety about the future and the desire to control the uncertainty during the time of economic challenges and political instability. Others might argue that shamans have an incredible ability to persuade people to solicit their practice, even if they may or may not offer the best solutions. And some others will argue that shamans indeed offer opposite, which is the actual help to the people who are experiencing some difficulties and things like that. But the Buryats whom I studied have an explanation of their own. And their explanation is related back to the ancestors. So they told me that they have so many shamans and they have been conducting so many rituals because the spirits of their ancestors who had been suppressed during socialism, during socialist persecution of religion, have returned, have sort of awakened and returned back, and they have been taking revenge from the descendants for forgetting and abandonment. And that's one of the ways in which they explain things like illnesses, economic downfall, domestic violence, unusual deaths in the families and things like that. So in order to ameliorate those spirits who have gone very unhappy, very distressed, the families have initiated their members into shamans. So of course, when I tell this story, the story of the Buryats themselves, I'm always asked, well, who are the spirits? Do they work? Are shamans or charlatans? Are they just sort of playing with innocent people and extracting the money? And in this case, are they just extracting the sheep because, you know, some people remain just as poor as they were before. Some people never recover from illnesses, even though they have gone to shamans for years and years and years to come. So to that answer, to that question, I have my own answer, is that rituals may work for some and may not work for others, but there is something about the rituals that actually does work. Rituals, when the shamans, especially the Buryat shamans, become possessed by the spirits of the ancestors, something interesting that happens, and as you might know, it's the so-called spirit possession. In the literature about shamans, much of the speech of the spirit has been rendered as impossible to understand. Right, so if the people get possessed by shamans, then they have slurred speech, they don't understand, they're incomprehensible, they talk nonsense, or they turn into, they sort of resemble animals and things like that. My experience with the shamans has been completely opposite. People who go to shamans may or may not believe, but what actually matters in exchange for the sheep that they have offered is that the shamans offer fragments of the past through the spirits. In other words, the spirits of the ancestors who come from 13th century, from 16th century, from different parts of Russian, Mongolian, and Manchurian and other parts of the world, they actually offer the lives, the stories about the lives of the ancestors. So those stories are fragments about battles. Those stories are about, star-crossed love, or about violence, or about the war. or about any kinds of anecdotal events that they have happened during their lives in the previous century. And so if one could listen to those stories over and over in different rituals, that what happens is that gradually a big sort of map of a geographical map of the territory of those spirits emerge in the imagination, but also a different kind of history unfolds, right? A history that is not written in the textbooks, the history that state doesn't care, the history that you cannot really find even in oral histories, because that history can be only transmitted orally and through shamanic rituals. So instead of sheep, in exchange for sheep that people offer to the shamans, people get something, not always money that they wanted, not always the wealth, and not always the health that they want to regain because they've been sick. But what matters is the stories, what matters is the memory. And that's why the talk is called Exchanging History for Sheep. And to conclude, I just want to read one story to you from the book, just to give an idea how that history unfolds during the rituals. That history is always fragmented. It's a small part usually, and in order to reconstruct a fuller history, a person has to go over and over to the shamans. So in one of the rituals that I attended while I was living with the Buryats in the 2000s, there was a family that had the usual stresses from the socioeconomic collapse. They couldn't recover their business. They had their children. They had problems with their children's health. They had some domestic violence, but most importantly, what ended up happening is that the more they invested in their private business, the more they seemed to have been losing instead of gaining. So they went to the shaman who said that you have a spirit of your ancestor whom you've forgotten, and you didn't worship for generations, for actually several generations, and once you worship it, you might be able to regain your luck. Whether that family regained that luck or not, I don't know. What I know is that they gained history. So, seeing that the shaman is possessed by a spirit, Lofsang, who is communicating with the shaman who is possessed with the spirit, comes closer to the female shaman who is being possessed and inquires politely, "Bonjour," which is the term for the spirit. Who are you? Where do you come from? Please have a seat on our snow-white lambskin rug. In response to the greetings, a scratchy voice emanating from behind the swinging black tassels of a headdress responds in song with a curse. The stupid puppets of flesh, the empty skulls without the traces of the past, cursed by illness, afflicted by misfortunes, with little to eat and drink, how good have your lives been so far? Lofsan beckons the eldest man of the visiting family, Durch, and tells him to bow to the spirit. Durch, who has never seen a shamanic ritual, is trembling in silence. Lofsan then calmly leads the conversation with the shaman who has been possessed by the spirit. Orshol, please forgive us. Times were hard, the state was harsh. Your beloved children of later generations have all come to worship you. The spirit interrupts Lofsang and sings angrily, pointing to Durch with a drumstick. Diviners and lamas inquired about the mountain spirit in your lineage. You hastened to reply no, without knowing the truth. You rejected and abandoned me. Without food and drink, eating flesh and drinking blood, I wandered in wilderness and mountains, abandoned by my children. I hovered as a black crow over you, hoping that you would notice me. I blocked your only daughter's fortunes. I turned your red brain into dullness and confusion. So, there was this a little bit of stopping to decide what to do next because the spirit was very upset. And the rest of the group that was gathered in the ceremony bowed to the spirit and pleaded that they couldn't worship the spirit, mainly because the head of the family, the older man, said that his parents were persecuted during the 1930s, during the Great Terror. He lost his parents. He was sort of adopted by a different family, and therefore he just doesn't know anything about his family. So when he told the spirit about the fact that the reasons that why he didn't know about his past, the spirit in return introduced himself and told him about his story. So the spirit says, I am Baltan's son Sodno, a shaman with the title of Zarim, who died at the age of 96. I'm your ancestor in your father's lineage. I am the lord of the mountain in the Aga steppes. You neglected me. Why should I help you? You never acknowledged my existence. Why should I accept your offerings? Go away. The spirit turns away from Dirge, who is still sobbing. Dirge says that he lost his parents and blah, blah, blah, and he talks again about his history of not knowing. So, and towards the end, the family pleads with the spirit about, not harming them, not harassing them, and that the family would give him another ceremony of sheep, and that he should sort of take the family and bless the family and try to make up for the losses and for forgetting and things like that. And the spirit leaves. So this is just the one fragment of the story, and the book talks about many aspects of shamanic practices. And since this is just sort of our casual gathering, I wanted to highlight about what is credible about the incredible rituals of shamanism. And next time you ask me whether spirits exist, I would say yes, it exists, but it exists in the form of memory, in the form of remembering the past, and remembering the past not through books, not through textbooks, and not through the stories of, modernization, stories of battles and winning and things like that is written in textbooks, but through the tragic stories of spirits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mandavai. That was a fascinating talk on shamanism.
Thank you. Bye-bye.